Chapter 47. Cyrus. All resonates. The past, the present, and the future. The tales we hear as children, the stories we then pass on, have happened, are happening, or will happen soon enough. If not, then the stories would not exist. They resonate in our hearts because they are true, even the ones that begin as lies. A creation comes to life. A legendary city is swallowed by the sea. A bringer of light becomes a fallen angel, and Sharon sails across the river Styx, ferrying the dead to that place beyond. But on this day, the river has become an ocean, and the ferryman has a new name. He is the Toll, and he stands on the bow of a cargo ship that sails out of the sunset, a dark silhouette against the extinguishing light. On shore, the entire population of Quailane has received a new work order. All are to proceed to the docks. They have no idea what they are in for. Lorena dropped everything when the work order came in. A bright blinking command overtook every screen in her apartment. High priority. You didn't dolly when a high priority order came in. By the nature of work orders, information was sparse. She assumed because too much information would constitute unlawful communication from the Thunderhead. An order provided only a location, a priority rating, and the nature of the labor to be performed. Today it was the offloading of cargo. Lorena was by no means a longshoreman, but work was work, and there hadn't been any for months now. She was happy to do whatever was needed. As she made her way to the dock, she saw that others were doing the same. Later, she would find out that everyone on the atoll had received the same work order at the same instant, and people were coming by car, boat, bike, and foot to the main island's yacht. At the peak of construction, there were over 5,000 people in Quailane, building the ships that now towered like sentinels along the rim of the atoll. Over the weeks of inactivity, and since Loriana had implemented the self-supplantation protocol, that number had dropped to just about 1,200. Those who remained were in no hurry to leave, even without any work to do. They had grown accustomed to life away from the world, and with all the turmoil out there, a spot as isolated as Quailane seemed the best place to be. The jetty was already crowded when Loriana arrived. A container ship had just pulled into the primary pier, and workers were mooring it. When the gangway opened, a figure stepped out clothed in purple and silver that shimmered down over his shoulders like a waterfall, reflecting the bright lights of the dock that now overwhelmed the trails of dusk. Just behind him, on either side, were a pair of scythes. At the sight of scythes, some people turned and fled, fearing this was a moss cleaning, but most realized that this was something different. First of all, these scythes had no gems on the ropes, and second of all, one of them wore turquoise. Although her hood was up and no one could see her face clearly, people suspected who the turquoise scythe must be. Two more figures came out behind them, one in tawny brown, the other in more ordinary clothes, bringing the group's complement to 5. There was a hissed apprehension as the 5 figures stepped off the gangway onto the pier. Finally, the one in purple spoke. "Could someone tell me where we are?" he said. "I can't find it on any map." Agent Psychora stepped forward out of the crowd. "You're on Quailane Atoll, your sonority," he said. As soon as people heard "your sonority," gasps and whispers filtered through the crowd. This was the Toll, which explained why Adonis was with them. But why scythes? And why scythe anesthesia? "Agent Sakura," said the Toll, "it's good to see you again. Well, maybe not good, but at least better than the last time." So Sakura wasn't lying about having met the Toll. Funny, but there was something familiar about the Toll's face to Loriana as well. "I need to speak to the person in charge," the Toll said. "No, I'm in charge," Sakura told him. "No," said the Toll, "you're not." Then he looked out to the crowd. "I'm looking for Loriana Barchuk." Loriana was by no means a Dawnist, but to be called by name by their holy man made her Nanette struggle to keep her heart stable. There was fresh buzz from the crowd. Most people on the island knew Loriana, and as heads turned, the doll followed everyone's gaze to her. Loriana dry swallowed. "Present," she said like a schoolgirl. Then she cleared her throat, squared her shoulders, and strode forward, determined not to show how much she was shaking. Grayson was on his own. At least he was until he could access a landline. His earpiece was useless. The Thunderhead had warned him that once they neared their destination, interference could confound all wireless communication. But he wasn't on his own, was he? He had Anastasia and Morrison. He had Astrid and Yuri. He knew what it was like to be without the Thunderhead, what it was like to rely on people, and now, more than ever, he was happy to be in the company of people he knew he could trust. That made him think of Mendoza. Grayson had trusted him, but only when their goals aligned. The curate had done many things for the doll, but not much for Grayson. He was glad he had dismissed Mendoza when he did. He did not belong here today. Everyone with him had steeled themselves for this moment by the time they strode down the gangway. The task before them tonight would be difficult, but not impossible. The Thunderhead would never give them an impossible task. Back in Britannia, Grayson had told Anastasia what their cargo would be, but after their encounter with the harbour master of Guam, the others were quick to figure it out. And they asked Grayson the same question he himself had asked. Why would the Thunderhead need us to collect the glint? After all, it wasn't as if the Thunderhead could revive them. It could not interfere with scythe actions, no matter how heinous those actions were. The glint were gone. Period. The end. No one who had ever been officially glint had ever been revived. So what could the Thunderhead possibly need them for? The thunder is mysterious, but it knows what it's doing, Astrid had said. We should have more faith in it. Then, as their ship had approached the atoll, and the spindly slivers on the horizon resolved into dozens of rockets gleaming in the setting sun, Grayson knew. He had no idea how the Thunderhead would accomplish it, but he knew. They all did. We're destined for the humans, Astrid had said when she saw those ships. Her spirit filled with a transcendental elation the stoic woman had never expressed before. We Townies have been chosen to ascend and live again. And now they stood on the dock, at the beginning of a strange new venture. While Psychora nursed his skewered ego, Grayson spoke to the woman whom the Thunderhead had told him to seek out. She greeted him by shaking his hand a little too long for comfort. It gave him a flash of deja vu. It's a pleasure to meet you, Your Sonority, Loriana said. The Thunderhead gave me the plans for this place and had me approve the project. Why me? I don't know, but we got it all built, and it's ready for whatever you and the Honorable Scythe need it for. Scythes, corrected Morrison. Sorry, said Loriana. No disrespect meant, Your Honor. Your Honors. We have almost 42,000 in 160 40-foot crates, so about 250 in each, Grayson told Loriana. Forgive me, Your Sonority, Loriana said, but we're not exactly in communication with the Thunderhead as we're on Savory up the wazoo, so we're not really sure what you have 42,000 of. Grayson took a deep breath. It didn't occur to him that they wouldn't know. Just as the Thunderhead had never told him where they were going, it had never told these people what they were receiving. He thought about how to best explain it and realized that he could say it all in one word. Colonists, he told her. 42,000 colonists. Loriana just looked at him, blinked a few times, not sure if she had heard him right. Colonists, she repeated. Yes, said the doll. In shipping crates. Yes, said the doll. She thought about all the implications of that, and suddenly it came to her in an epiphany. So much about this project had baffled her. It all made sense now. 1,000 colonists in the hold of each ship, because the living needed so much more than the dead. Oxygen, food, water, companionship. The only thing the dead needed was gold, which was the one thing space had to offer. All right, said Loriana, ready for the challenge. We'll have to work quickly. She turned to Psychora, who was close enough to hear their entire exchange and had gone a bit pale. "Bob, make sure everyone knows what the job is, and that everyone is expected to help." "Understood," he said, deferring completely to her authority now. Lorena made a quick mental calculation. 35 is our magic number, she told him. "Everyone will be responsible for transporting 35 colonists each to a ship. If we start now, we can finish by dawn." "I'll get it done," said Sakura. "But what about the crews? Aren't there quarters and supplies on each of those ships designed for a live crew as well?" Lorena swallowed hard. "Yes," she said. "I believe we're the crew." Anastasia held her position as Grison's right flank. Even so, she knew she was the center of many people's attention. She almost wished she hadn't worn her robe, that she'd stayed in street clothes. But Grison had insisted that both she and Morrison present themselves as sides. Mendoza was right about one thing, Grison had told them as he slipped on his silver scapular. "Image is everything. We need these people to be odd if they're going to do what we need them to." But then, as Anastasia stood there on the pier, someone came charging at them from the crowd. Morrison clenched in gleaning position, hands at the ready, and Anastasia pulled out a blade, stepping forward, putting herself between Grayson and this fun. "Stay back," she ordered. "Stay back or you'll be gleaned." It was a wraith of a man. He wore tattered rags and had wild grey hair that was turning white. His beard was an unkempt snarl that billowed around his cracked face, making him look like he was slowly being devoured by a cloud. The man froze when he saw the blade. He looked from its shiny steel to Anastasia with eyes that were careworn and tormented. Then he said, "Saitra, do you not recognize me?" Scythe Anastasia melted away when she heard him speak her name. She knew who this was the instant he spoke, because whatever else had changed, his voice was still the same. "Scythe Faraday?" She dropped her blade, letting it clatter on the ground, horrified that she had even considered using it on him. When she had last seen him, he was leaving to find the land of Nod. And this was it. Damn no formal decorum. She would have thrown herself into his arms, but as she approached him, he knelt before her. This, perhaps the greatest of all sights who had ever lived, was kneeling before her. He clasped her hands in his and looked up at her. "I was afraid to believe it," he said. "Munira told me you were alive, but I couldn't let myself hope, because if it proved untrue, I would not be able to bear it. But you're here. You're here." Then he lowered his head, and all his words became weeping. Saitra knelt down to him and spoke gently. "Yes," she said. "I'm alive now, thanks to Marie. She saved me. Now let's go somewhere quiet where we can talk, and I'll tell you all about it." Munira watched Faraday leave with Scythe Anastasia. She had brought Faraday here, but the moment he saw that turquoise robe, Munira was forgotten. She didn't have the power to bring him back from his self-imposed exile, but all it took was invoking Anastasia's name, and he left his solitary islet. 3 years Munira had spent tending to him, putting up with him, making sure he didn't languish away into nothing, and he discarded her without a backward glance. She left the dogs before she knew what was even in the crates, before Sakura, Luriana, or anyone else could give her an assignment. She was never really part of this community to begin with, so why act like she was now? When she got home and saw the war corridor still pulsating on every electronic surface, she hit the circuit breakers, killing power to the house, and lit a candle. Let the cargo be loaded onto the ships. Let the ships be launched. Let it all be over. Then finally she could go back to the library, back to Alexandria where she belonged.